friends, thanks for joining me today. Today, we're gonna make yogi tea. Let's get started. This recipe was given to me during my yoga teacher training. It is very similar to masala chai, but it's not quite the same. I'll talk about the difference in a minute. Chai is the Hindi word for tea. You will not say chai tea because you are saying tea. Just like you don't say Sahara Desert because you are saying desert. People do, but it's wrong because it's unnecessary and redundant. Masala chai is spiced tea. What makes yogi tea a little different from a traditional chai is that you make the tea, pull it off the heat, and then add milk and sugar. And in a traditional masala chai, you make the tea and add the milk and sugar in the pot and cook it all together at the same time. So that's what makes it different. That's what makes it a yogi tea. And for some reason, this is the tea that we drink in yoga. It is essentially a masala chai, it's just cooked a little differently. A lot of the spices are very similar. So there isn't really one recipe that is masala chai. Each family kind of comes up with their own recipe and they use the spices that they have on hand, which is not always the same. I've come across some recipes where somebody uses saffron. I've come across recipes where they use allspice, which is interesting to me. Allspice is native to Jamaica, not to India. It's not or even that region of the world. So it comes from a completely different place, but some families use it in their recipes, and that's perfectly fine. Once you kind of establish your family recipe, you're pretty much only going to make it that way, depending on what spices that you have on hand. So this is how I learned to make yogi tea. Let's have a look at our spices. So the first thing that we're going to put in our tea is cloves. These are whole cloves. You want about 15 of those. Next, we have black peppercorns. About 20 or so black peppercorns. Cinnamon sticks. My recipe calls for 3, but they were like short. They were about half the size of this, so I'll put 2 of these. These are really long. It's hard to tell at this angle. 20 green cardamom pods. There is a difference between green cardamom and black cardamom. If you find black cardamom, that's not what you want. You want the green. And we have to prepare this a special way. We prepare the cardamom by crushing it with a knife like you do garlic. Next, we have 4 or 5 anise stars. And the last thing that we need is a 3 to 4 inch piece of fresh ginger. I have used dried ginger before, and that's fine if that's what you have, but fresh ginger is really the best. And this is kind of a small little piece, so I'm probably gonna take a few little slices. All right, let's not do that. I'm going to cut my fingers off. We don't want to see that. I'm going to do one more piece. This is going to be very gingery. I like ginger in my teas, so that's going to be great. And there's one more thing that we'll need. That is the black tea. I'm going to use the cinnamon stick here because it's all going to go in together eventually. The tea that goes into chai is usually very specific. You're usually looking for a CTC. As we remember, CTC means cut, tear, curl. You're looking for a very specific CTC Assam. This one is made by Wa Bakri. It's a very delicious black tea from the Assam region of India. Now we see what makes this special is that all of these teeny tiny little pieces, we can see that this tea is just tiny little balls of tea. That is what you want in a traditional chai, and that is what I put in my Yogi tea. So now that we have all of our ingredients together, we have crushed our cardamom. I have gently pounded the other spices to kind of break them open and get them releasing their fragrances. And we have sliced ginger. Now we're going to get the water on the stove. For this recipe, it makes a lot of tea. This is the way I learned to make it. I haven't tried to reduce the recipe or anything like that. I always make it this way. You need 2 quarts of water on the stove and heat it to boiling. So let's do that. And here we are. The water is boiling. I am going to add in a strainer that just makes it a little bit easier to clean things up. And then we start adding in our spices. First, I add in the cloves. Everything has been crushed to release its flavors. We're just going to let that mingle for a minute. Then the black peppercorns. Let the black peppercorns have their moment. Star anise. Next, we're going to add in our cardamom pods. They've all been crushed open. Let them cook together there. Some slices of ginger. I'm going to put all of these in there. And my cinnamon sticks. So because of the diameter of my strainer, I'm just going to break these. And then we're going to let that boil for about 5 minutes. So it's been a few minutes. You can see all of these spices are infusing in the water here. It smells so good. Cardamom is one of those spices that tends to show up in almost every masala chai recipe. Next, we add our tea. Reduce the heat to a simmer. Then we're going to cover it and let it simmer for 30 minutes. But Ren, isn't that too long to steep black tea? Yes, it is. However, this is different and I'll tell you why. There are 2 things that cause tannins to release from tea. It is water temperature and steep time. So in this particular recipe, it's 1 teaspoon of tea, which is just about what you would find in a tea bag, and it's in 2 quarts of water. So that 1 teaspoon is in 8 times as much water than what we would normally make 1 cup of tea. That's also assuming you're drinking 8 ounces of tea. I usually am. So it's less. The tea to water ratio is less. Additionally, we reduce the heat down to a simmer, so it's going to simmer for 30 minutes. It's not boiling for that amount of time. Boiling that tea for 30 minutes absolutely is going to make your drink very bitter. But since it's a simmer, it's not going to release the tannins because it's a lower heat. So the lower heat plus the larger volume of water is what makes it okay to simmer this black tea for 30 minutes. All right, we are all done. It smells amazing. It's got this beautiful color. So now I am just going to try to carefully, hopefully I won't make too much of a mess, pour into my cup. In fact, let's use the bottling funnel. It's still probably going to make a mess because this does not have pour. Oh, that didn't do too bad. Now, like masala chai, yogi tea should be served with sugar and milk. Generally, you put in more sugar than you would normally put in. I normally put no sugar in my tea. So I put 2 cubes this time. The other thing that we add is cream. Milk, specifically. This is almond milk because lactose and I do not get along. It's nice and hot, so give it a good stir, melt that sugar. The sugar and milk is really added to taste here. But yogi tea, like masala chai, should be served with sugar and milk. And there we are. Oh, it's so good. This makes a large batch of tea. What I normally do is bottle it so that I can have it later. These spices are really good in the winter. It's also really tasty warm. Since we're approaching summer, I'll bottle this tea and put it in the refrigerator, and then it'll be nice and cool and refreshing. You can reheat it. You can reheat it on the stove or in the microwave. A lot of people don't suggest doing that because it diminishes the health benefits of both the tea and the spices. A lot of these spices are very common in Ayurveda, which harkens back to the time when tea was used as medicine. But that's one of the things that makes it just such a lovely drink. It's very wholesome. So I'm gonna bottle my tea and sit down and enjoy this cup that I just made. I hope all of you are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining me. I am grateful for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye. And now we're ready to throw everything in the pot. No, we're not. There are 2 things that cause tea to release. Try it again.